Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of B.L.O.K Sports on www.yourstreet.tv. And I am your host, Michael Jefferson. And again, I say welcome to you on another edition of B.L.O.K Sports. And it's great to be back here once again. I was on last night giving a quick update of the CIAA, the SIAC, and now we're getting ready to go into the MEAC and the SWAC. This is our regular day for broadcasting, but I will be giving daily updates. I was unable to give daily updates on last week, and I apologize because that was one of the things that I said that I was going to do, but I will make sure that this week that I give daily updates on how your favorite team in the MEAC and the SWAC, whether it's the women's basketball team or the men's basketball team, I will be giving daily updates at around about this time frame. So you can expect to hear from me roughly 7 or 8 o'clock. I was giving them earlier during the daytime for the CIAA, but I will give later updates for the MEAC and the SWAC, and I will be giving updates on each team. And the reason being is because the MEAC and the SWAC are having their tournaments played during the same time frame, starting off tomorrow. And we're looking forward to having just a shindig of a basketball tournament. But again, if you're looking to get in touch with me at any point in time, this is the best location to reach me. And here you are. Here is my website, of course, at www.yourstreet.tv. And, of course, my email address is michaelj@jcconnect.net. Again, at any point in time you want to reach out to me, you can either catch up with me on our website at www.yourstreet.tv or michaelj@jcconnect.net. Just reach out at any point in time. Tell me anything you want to hear, see, or anything that you may even want us to cover. So if there's any type of game or event that you need us to cover, please let me know. I was in Jackson, Mississippi this past weekend, actually covering our National Alumni Association, and that was a great event. We had the opportunity to see a lot of individuals that we hadn't seen in quite a long time, and had a chance to reminisce and also carry on the business of the Jackson State University National Alumni Association. But even though I'm a grad of Jackson State, I want to make sure that I cover every HBCU as I possibly can. And especially since we've already covered the CIAA, the SIAC, and now we're getting ready to cover the MEAC and the SWAC conference. I was going to try to go to one of the conference tournaments this year. And even though I do have credentials, don't know if I'll be able to make it because of some other events that actually came up here. But yet and still, regardless, I will be providing updates to you, just in case you want to hear it from someone else and hear it from a different point of view, because the other entities that actually carry our games, they will come on a few minutes before, and they will only stay on a few minutes after. And you need to hear the full story from someone who actually graduated from an HBCU. But it is great to be covered, and that's one thing we cannot take for granted. Now, going back into the MEAC, and as I said, the MEAC is having their tournament starting tomorrow, and the MEAC and the SWAC, I should say, are having their tournament starting tomorrow. And the first games will actually be played by Jackson. I'm sorry. As you can see, I still have Jackson State on my mind because it's always there. J-State's always on my mind. But the first games, I should actually say, will be played first starting off by the SWAC. And the SWAC will start off with their women's games starting off at 11 a.m. But the MEAC will start off at 12. And even though I always start off with the MEAC before I start off with the SWAC, and I'm going to go ahead and continue on with that tradition. But as I said, the MEAC will lead off with their games at noon, whereas the SWAC will lead off with their games at 11 a.m. And both will lead off with the women's game. And the first game, let's go there and let us talk about those games first for the MEAC. And this is the women's schedule. As you can see, game 1 for the women, you see Norfolk State, the number 1 seed, and they will host, or should I say, they will take on the number 8 seed, South Carolina State. And that game will be at 12 noon starting on tomorrow. And that game will be played at the Norfolk Scope Arena. And beautiful place, beautiful arena. And they actually have a contract to extend the relationship until 2027. So congratulations to the MEAC being able to extend the contract for the games to be for the conference tournament to continue to be played at the Norfolk Scope Arena. So congratulations on extending that contract, and beautiful place, beautiful arena for the teams to be able to continue to play, and for that arena to continue to host the MEAC basketball tournament. Now let's continue on with the tournament play. The second game will be between Howard University and Morgan State, which is the number 7 seed. And that game is scheduled for 2 p.m. And as you can see, they will lead off with their women instead of alternating as the SWAC conference does. So the women will lead off at game 1 at 12 noon on tomorrow. And the second game will then be played by Howard University at 2 p.m. On Thursday, the first game will be played by the number 4 seed, Coppin State, and they will play the number 5 seed, Maryland Eastern Shore, and that game is at 12 noon on Thursday. And the second game for the women will be North Carolina Central, and they will take on Delaware State, the number 6 seed. North Carolina Central is the number 3 seed, and Delaware State is the number 6 seed. And from there, the winner between the Lady Howard Bison will then, the winner between Howard and Morgan State will take on the winner of North Carolina Central and Delaware State, and that game will be played on Friday at 2 p.m. But before that game is played, the winners between Norfolk State and South Carolina State will take on the winners between Coppin State and Maryland Eastern Shore, and that will be the first game. The one thing you can easily say is that they are giving the number 1 seed as much time as possible to rest. And as you can see from the way it's set up, that number 1 seed and even the number 2 seed, they don't have to play after they play on Monday. They don't have to play again until Friday. Now, some people might say that's a disadvantage, but it depends on how much running around the country you've done, because sometimes that rest is great for that team and where they need their legs underneath them. Because if they don't have enough time, if they don't have enough rest for the team, then you would prefer to have as much time, because here you are. If you're the number 3 to the number 8 seed, guess what? You're playing back to back games. And that's hard. But that's what you signed up for. And so that means Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you're playing back to back games. Should I say back to back games? And whereas the number 1 and the number 2 seeds, they get a break. And there's a possibility for Norfolk State, as you can see via the bracket, it's possible for Norfolk State and Howard again to meet in the finals. And it'll be very interesting to see whether or not they can follow that up. And guess what, folks? That's my prediction. I said it again. I don't see anyone on the women's side upsetting either Howard or especially North Carolina Central. I'm sorry, because I'm thinking North Carolina Central would be the only team that could interrupt this flow, because they're the number 3 seed and they're in the same bracket as Howard. But as far as the bracket for Norfolk State University, I don't see anyone, because here in Norfolk State, they, of course, they play South Carolina State initially. Then they eventually will play the winner between Coppin State and Maryland Eastern Shore. And with those teams, I'm sorry, guys, I just don't see anyone that will give them pause. I don't see anyone that will give Norfolk State pause. Howard, even though they came on like a freight train, but I'm sorry, I still don't see anyone that could give Norfolk State, the Lady Spartans, a pause. I just don't. I may be totally unequivocally be incorrect, but I just don't see it. And there's always that possibility. But we'll see, because why? That's why they play the game. Now for the men. And on the men's side, of course, you have, again, Norfolk State sits at the top of the bracket. And, of course, Norfolk State and the men, they play the evening games. And as you can see, Norfolk State, the third game that will be played on tomorrow, because the ladies will have the first 2 games starting at noon and at 2 p.m. But as you can see here via the brackets, you have Norfolk State, the number 1 seed, playing the number 8 seed of Coppin State. And that game will start off at 6 p.m. And the second game that night, which is number 4, the 4th game, will be North Carolina Central, and they're the number 2 seed, playing against Maryland Eastern Shore. And that's the 4th game that will be played on Thursday night. But it is actually the second men's game. And we'll see if this all pans out for the team and how well they perform. And the following day, on Thursday, you have the number 4 seed. The men of Howard will take on Morgan State. And that's the number 5 seed. And that game will be at 6 p.m. And the 8 p.m. game will pit South Carolina State, the number 3. South Carolina State, the number 3 seed, against Delaware State. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not South Carolina State can walk out of that game without Delaware State upsetting South Carolina State. The Bulldogs from South Carolina State. This is going to be a good tournament between from the fourth seed on down. It's going to be tough. And even for South Carolina State to get out of that game against Delaware State, those Bulldogs are going to have to fight real hard. They better make sure they don't feel the sting from Delaware State, because from everything that I've seen about these guys from the MEAC, especially on the men's side, let me say this. Outside of Norfolk State, again, making it through, and the only pause I can see here is that, and let me go back, is that in order for Norfolk State to make it to the championship game this year, they will not face Howard in the championship game, because if Norfolk State makes it past Coppin State, which I believe they will, and Howard University makes it past Morgan State, which I believe they should be able to, they will face each other in the semifinal round. But Howard will have just come off that game on Thursday night against Morgan State, and Norfolk State will have had a day of rest. So that is going to be the interesting matchup for the MEAC. And the question is how quickly will Norfolk State be able to dispatch Coppin State on tomorrow night? If Norfolk State is able to dispatch Coppin State quickly so they can get some rest, then that game against Howard could be very interesting, which means it may not be a game at all. Could be interesting, folks. That's all I have to say. It could be very interesting in that matchup. This was one of those things that a lot of people wanted to see again. And some people were like, well, we don't want to see another Norfolk State Howard matchup. I kind of did. But I do understand, once you've seen this matchup multiple times in the conference finals, this is something you're like, can someone else qualify? It's kind of like always seeing the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. They've been there for the last several years. And now for the last few years, Norfolk State has been in the conference finals. But like I said, I see Norfolk State moving forward to the semis. I also see Howard University moving forward to the semis. And again, you will have one of those teams in the final. Again, you just will not have both of those teams in the finals for the men. And on the other side of the bracket, I can easily see North Carolina Central, the number 2 seed, making it through. Although South Carolina State is not going to be an easy team to kick out of the tournament. They have been very formidable so far throughout the tournament. And if they're able to make it through, it's going to be kind of interesting. All I know is this is going to be a fun tournament. The brand of basketball that the MEAC plays is very hard, very physical. And to watch the MEAC men and women play is something to behold. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against how the SWAC plays basketball, but it's just a different brand of basketball in the MEAC. And I think that's why the MEAC has had a little bit more success in the NCAA tournament than the SWAC. And a lot of people in the SWAC might say, are you serious? Are these words coming out of his mouth? Yes. And I'm a SWAC guy. Guys, you don't understand. I grew up. I woke up in the morning. I went to bed. And all I heard was either Jackson State or Alcorn. All I knew growing up was Jackson State, Alcorn, and the other team would more than likely be Grambling, all because of Coach Eddie Robinson. Didn't matter the season. I would always hear of those. But noticing the brand of ball that the MEAC plays, it's just different. A little bit more physical. Are we physical over in the SWAC? Yes, very. But it's just a different brand of ball, And we need to have a MEAC SWAC challenge again, but on the basketball side, and see how that fares. I mean, we kind of sort of do, but we need to make it official. And so I hope somebody's listening out there. Could be some money to be made, but I digress. So let's go ahead and take a look at the SWAC and their brackets. Now, the SWAC set up their brackets a little bit different. And the way the SWAC set up their brackets is that they have the men on one side and the women on the other side. So you won't have to worry about, okay, who's here, who's there, and let's go to the women's bracket. Okay, let's go to the men's bracket. Everybody is right there. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket for the SWAC. And as I said, here we go. And as you can see on the left of your screen, you have the women's bracket, and on the right of your screen, you have the men's. And as I mentioned earlier, they alternate. The women will play game 1, then game 2 will be played by the men. So they will alternate during the day. And let's continue with the setup. So in game 1, you have the G men, the G women, I should say, Grambling State. They will host in game 1, or they will play the number 7 seed, because Grambling is the number 2 seed. They will play Florida A&M, who is the number 7 seed, and that game will begin at 11 a.m. And I'll just go ahead and stay on the women's side. The second game for the women will pit Jackson State, which is the number 1 seed overall for the women, and they will play the number 8 seed of Prairie View A&M. And as you can see, that game will take place at 5:30 p.m. because the second game, the next game between them, and that game will be at 2 p.m. between the number 2 seed of Alcorn and Alabama A&M. But we're going to get over there in a few minutes. Now, the third game, which will be played on that Thursday, will be the Lady Jags, them damn Jags from Southern University. And they will play at 11 a.m. on March 14th. And they will play host to the Braves of Alcorn State, and they are the number 6 seed, the Alcorn State Braves. And that game, as I mentioned, is 11 a.m. And at 5:30 p.m., you have UAPB, the ladies of Arkansas Pine Bluff. The number 4 seed will play the number 5 seed of Alabama A&M. And there you go for the quarters. Now, the winners of Jackson State and Prairie View and UAPB and Alabama A&M, they will move down to the 15th. There we go. We have Jackson State. If Jackson State is able to prevail against Prairie View, they'll move from Wednesday to Friday. And that game will be at 5:30 on the semis. And that first game, though, on that day will pit Grambling. The winner between Grambling and Florida A&M will then play the winner between Southern and Alcorn. Now that, my friends, that's what to. I'm actually looking forward to first the Braves of Alcorn against the Lady Jags from Southern University. That's the game I had to back up there. I had to backtrack, but that's the game I'm really looking forward to watching, is that game between Southern and Alcorn. And then the winner of that game, especially if the Lady Jags meet up against the Lady Tigers from Grambling, yes, that's going to state of Louisiana that they really don't like each other. But it's going to be a great game. So I'm hoping that even though I'll be in class during that time, actually, no, I will not. I don't have an 11 o'clock class on Friday. So guess where I will be? I will be watching that game on Friday. And it'll be 12 noon my time. My class is at 1 o'clock. So guess what I will be doing? Paying close attention, at least to the first half, because my class begins at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which will be 12 noon. So I'll at least be able to pay close attention to the first half of that game. And with that being said, oh gosh, like I said, guys, I'm chomping at the bit. Now, do I think Jackson State will have pause in their matriculation through to the tournament? This year, not until they get to the finals. Do I see UAPB or Alabama A&M causing them issues? Possibly. It's possible. Let's go back to the brackets. Here we are again. It's possible. Everything is possible because look at them damn Jags. Look at what they did to them last year. And whoever makes it out of that bottom bracket, and I think it will be between Grambling and Southern, whoever makes it out of that dogfight between them on that Friday, they will probably be beaten up because they're going to beat the hell out of each other. I'm sorry for using that language on air, but guys, I'm sorry. I just see when Southern and Grambling meet in the semis on Friday, I can see them just wearing each other out. And by the time, and whoever wins that game between Southern and Grambling, I can literally see them just being a little tired and not being able to hang with the Lady Tigers from Jackson State University when they make it to the finals. Now, don't get me wrong. It's just something about the Lady Jags from Southern University. They just find just another breath. They find another way to win. They just find another way to play tough against the Tigers from Jackson State. But that's just the way they play. It's a never give up for the Jaguars. Doesn't matter. It's checkers, pinochle, horseshoes, football, basketball, baseball. Doesn't matter. Went to a baseball game. Was Jackson State they were almost in the process of just writing their name on the trophy even before the game started. This was a few years ago, and here comes Southern. They just kept chipping. They just kept biting. They just kept fighting. They just kept making their way against the Tigers, and they eventually won that game. That's why I'm sorry to keep going on and on and on about the Jaguars. And I'm a Jackson State alum. But it's just something about when Southern plays Jackson. I can't explain it. It's just something about them always wanting to beat us. It's almost like they don't care about Grambling. And they're the in-state rival. But it seems like we are their biggest rival in every sport. But we'll see this year. But the first set of games on Wednesday, Jackson State versus Prairie View and Grambling versus Florida A&M. Those are the first games that will be played between the women. Now let's move to the men's bracket. Now on the men's side, you have the number 1 seed that will play the last game, but the first game that will be played, which is the second game of the day, you have Alcorn, which is the number 2 seed, hosting, or should I say, playing the number 7 seed, Alabama A&M. That game will be at 2 p.m. the game right after the first game of the women, which is going to be Grambling against Florida A&M. And the next game that will be played is going to be the number 1 seed, Grambling State against Alabama State. And Grambling, being the number 1 seed, will play the number 8 seed, Alabama State. Now, Grambling, during the entire season, they had been hovering back and forth between the first, third place. They were always there at the top. One way, shape, form, or fashion. They were always there. And even though you had some teams that were in the first place, then they fell, had a hard fall, then they came back up, then they had another fall. Grambling was always near or at the top, and at the end of this year, they're the number 1 seed. Now, as far as everyone else, that the team from Alcorn, they came out of freaking nowhere. They were in the bottom half of the SWAC conference, and they put on a win streak that was out of this world. And so for what the Braves did, they won 7 or 8 games in a row. I don't remember. While the other teams were losing, they just kept coming. And they ended up being the number 2 seed in the conference. As you can see here, the number 2 seed overall. So for them, congratulations to the Alcorn State Braves, because even though they're the number 2 seed, they really don't have the easiest way to go. Now, if you look at the bracket again, and let me do the rundown again. So on the next day, on Thursday, you have the first game for the men will be Jackson State, the number 6 seed, will play Texas Southern, which is the number 3 seed. And then the last game of the night, you will have Southern University, the number 4 seed, playing number 5, the 5th seed, Bethune-Cookman. Now, let me get on my diatribe right now. Jackson State will play Texas Southern. I hate saying this. I truly hate saying this, but that's a horrible matchup for Jackson State. I would say Jackson State, it would have been better for Jackson State to have matched up against Southern, Grambling, Alcorn, anyone. Texas Southern has always been a rough matchup for us. It doesn't matter who we're playing. That's just always been a rough matchup. I can't explain why. But Texas Southern, for some reason, now did we beat them this year? Yes, we did. We were successful in beating them once this year. But then Jackson State had a 4-game losing streak. Did we make up for it? Yes. But in our last game of the year, we barely beat Mississippi Valley State by 1 point. Now, don't get me wrong. Valley came out playing their butts off this past Saturday. Oh my gosh, they put up a fight. They were playing like their lives depended on winning that game. They almost pulled it off, but they played one whale of a game. Jackson State had to put on the brakes. They had to put on that defensive pressure the last few seconds of the game to make sure that they pulled out that victory. Because otherwise, they were coming to upset Jackson State. They really had it in. But Jackson State was able to pull off the victory. And their reward was playing Texas Southern, the number 3 seed in the conference. And as I said, Jackson State is listed as the number 6 seed. And with Jackson State being listed as the number 6 seed, it'll be interesting to see how well they play. Now, whoever gets out of this bracket, where Jackson State is, between Jackson State and Texas Southern, they will have the opportunity to play Alcorn State. Now, the question is whether or not the Braves have enough legs to continue their momentous fight up the SWAC conference and continuing on to the SWAC championship. Because if they are fortunate enough to beat Alabama A&M, I'm sorry, Tiger fans. And let me come back. I'm sorry, Tiger fans of Jackson State. It pains me to say this. It really pains me to say this, because I would love to see Jackson State make it to the finals. There's nothing more I want to see than Jackson State make it to the finals. But I can see Texas Southern winning. Neutral site. Texas Southern has played pretty decent in neutral site games, and especially games at home or not on the opponent's court. I can see Texas Southern defeating the Tigers of Jackson State. Jackson State has had success against Texas Southern and against Alabama A&M and against Alcorn. But I can see Texas Southern winning and playing against Alcorn in the semis in this bracket. And in this bracket, it's going to be a dogfight, because guess what? In that top bracket, Grambling is moving down to play in the semis from Wednesday to Friday. And guess what's going to happen? Pretty much the same thing that's going to happen on the women's side. You're going to have Grambling playing against Southern. One game behind the other. You're going to have, and this is my prediction. So on that Friday at 11 a.m., you're going to have the women of Grambling, the number 2 seed for the women, playing the number 3 seed at 11 a.m., followed by, on Friday, the number 1 seed Grambling Tigers playing against the number 4 seed Southern. So you're going to have an all Louisiana final in 2 separate brackets, one for the women and one for the men. And you will have, as far as I'm concerned, a Louisiana school playing in the finals for both the men and the women. And wow, it's going to be interesting to see. You will not have, unless Alcorn, that's the only way I can see it, unless Alcorn can pull off the victory against Southern and find a way, and those are the Lady Braves, the Lady Braves, if they're fortunate enough to find a way to beat the Lady Jaguars. The only way we can have an all Mississippi tournament is if the Braves from Alcorn defeat Southern, because I can see Jackson State going all the way to the finals. But Alcorn has to figure out a way to upset Southern and upset Grambling. That's a tall order for the women. And it'll be a tall order for the Tigers. Not as tall, though, as I think Jackson State would be for the men. Alcorn, the Lady Braves could be done. And all jokes aside, as I think about it, the Tigers from Jackson State could probably pull off an upset too. As I said, I had a chance to see them play Texas Southern. Had a chance to see them play the Braves of Alcorn. They had leads late in those games, the ones that they lost. So if the Tigers can play a complete game where they tighten up that defense and not get into foul trouble, they could actually make it to the finals. Which means they have to defeat both Texas Southern and Alcorn to make it to the finals. I don't see any pause for Grambling. Don't see any pause for Grambling. And let me get back there. Yes, Grambling will play Southern in the semis. But I'm sorry. I may be wrong. I just don't see Southern beating Grambling. Just don't see it. But for the most part, if Grambling brings on that defense and continue with the great shooting that they've had, yeah, Grambling will be in the finals. And the question is, will they face Alcorn, who has had that great run in the second half of the season? I mean, Alcorn has just had a great run the second half. I saw the game where they played Jackson State. Jackson State had a lead in that game. And Alcorn just kept plugging away, pushing away, and they eventually won that game. And so we'll see whether or not Alcorn can continue with the game and continue with their play and continue to be that team that is a surprising rise. And had they had maybe one or two more games, who knows? They could have been the number one seed. But it'll just be interesting to see whether or not Alcorn can continue with their run. And with all of that being said, I'm closing it out tonight because I will be seeing you every day this week, all the way through to the finals, and giving you updates on what's going on. But more than anything else, I do recommend that if you can, please pay close attention to ESPN. Please see if you can watch any of the games on ESPN Plus or ESPN2 or ESPNU, because between the MEAC and the SWAC, those games will be shown on some flavor of ESPN. So my recommendation to you guys, catch those games, watch them, enjoy them, support your favorite HBCU. If you did not graduate from one, as I said, support your favorite. If you're a bandwagon HBCU fan, fine. Support your favorite team. Because you know where my money's going. It's going to Jackson State, and I'm going to support them. But whoever wins, if Jackson State finds themselves, unfortunately, not matriculating to the end, I'm going to support the champion of the SWAC conference. And I will also continue to support the team, whoever wins from the MEAC, because when we get to the NCAA basketball tournament, I want to see a couple of upsets. That's my hope, that whoever wins, we make it out of the first round. We make it out of the second round. There have been lots of upsets. So why not us? Why can't we continue with the upsets? We shall see. So with that being said, guys, look forward to seeing me tomorrow at 8 p.m. And unless something happens, I may come on later, may come on earlier, but I will be here. So until then, may God bless you. May God keep you. And I will see you tomorrow to discuss the results of the MEAC and the SWAC. So God bless and peace. We're out.